When a smile drains your peace, Carl Jung's warning about hidden evil, there's a moment we've all experienced, though few of us ever talk about it. It's subtle, almost unnoticeable, a shift in the air, a discomfort you can't quite name. You're in the presence of someone smiling, someone polite, even warm. Their words are kind, their tone is pleasant, and yet something inside you tightens. A flicker of unease, a whisper of fear, a chill in a room that should feel safe. You question yourself, why does this person make me feel so exhausted, so confused, so off? That moment right there is not your imagination. Carl Jung would tell you it's a signal, a psychic alarm. It's what he called the shadow pressing through human interaction. And if you ignore it, you may pay a price far greater than discomfort. Because sometimes evil doesn't arrive with violence or blood, it arrives wearing a smile. We live in a world obsessed with appearances. Everything is curated, from Instagram feeds to corporate emails to the way we greet each other with mechanical, empty pleasantries. But Jung warned us, what is repressed does not disappear. It waits, it festers, and eventually it leaks through. He believed that every human being carries a shadow, the dark, hidden part of the psyche that contains everything we refuse to face. Our rage, envy, deceit, fear, and cruelty. But here's the twist. The more we deny it in ourselves, the more we project it onto others. And worse, the more vulnerable we become to those who have made peace with their own darkness, not by healing it, but by mastering it in ways that hide it behind charm.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
So when a smile drains your peace, it's not a random glitch in your perception. It's not paranoia. It's your unconscious mind sensing something your conscious mind is too polite to acknowledge. Jung would call this a confrontation with the persona, the mask someone wears to function in society, and its dissonance with the shadow lurking beneath. Some people use their persona to maintain a boundary between their inner chaos and the world. But others, they use it as a weapon. They learn how to manipulate, how to mimic empathy, feign virtue, echo your values, all while their real motives stay hidden beneath a carefully crafted exterior. And the terrifying part is, they often believe their own mask. That's what makes them so dangerous. Let's get brutally honest. How many times in your life have you ignored your own discomfort just to be polite? How often have you smiled back when something inside you screamed to leave? We're conditioned to dismiss our intuition, especially when it conflicts with social expectations. But Jung believed that these moments, these subtle psychic disruptions, are the soul's way of trying to protect us. Evil, he said, doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a mentor, a nice friend, a partner who just wants what's best for you. And if you're not paying attention, you won't realize what's happening until you're emotionally drained, spiritually disoriented, and unsure of who you even are anymore. This isn't about becoming paranoid. It's about becoming conscious. It's about realizing that the world isn't divided into good people and bad people. It's about understanding that everyone carries a shadow, you included. And that the most dangerous individuals are not the ones who are openly dark, but the ones who have hidden their darkness so well that even they no longer see it. That's when evil becomes systemic, subtle, and seductive. That's when it thrives in families, institutions, and movements that claim to protect you. So how do we defend ourselves? First, we stop lying to ourselves. We stop pretending that everyone who's nice is good. We stop confusing politeness with respect, charisma with character, agreement with truth. Jung's warning wasn't just about others, it was about us. He believed that until we confront our own shadow, we will continue to be manipulated by those who have weaponized theirs. That's the ultimate psychological vulnerability. To believe that you are only light, and therefore blind to darkness when it arrives dressed in light's clothing. Second, we must learn to trust our inner signals even when they don't make logical sense. You don't need proof to leave a conversation that's draining you. You don't need permission to walk away from someone who confuses your spirit. Peace is not a luxury, it is a signal. When you lose it in someone's presence, ask yourself, what part of me is being violated here? Is it my boundaries, my truth, my intuition? These are not abstract questions. They are survival mechanisms, not just psychologically, but spiritually. One of Jung's most haunting insights is that evil thrives not just in cruelty, but in unconsciousness. The more unaware we are of our own inner darkness, the more power it has over us, and the more easily we become puppets in someone else's performance. So if someone's smile makes you feel small, confused, or drained, don't just dismiss it. Interrogate it. Ask yourself, what do they gain from this interaction? What do I lose? And why do I feel like I can't say no? Because the moment you begin asking these questions, you're doing something extraordinary. You're reclaiming your psychic sovereignty. You're no longer operating on autopilot. You're stepping off the stage of collective niceness and stepping into the raw, unfiltered terrain of truth. And that's what Jung was really inviting us into, not fear, but awareness. Not judgment, but discernment. Not paranoia, but presence. So I leave you with this. When was the last time you smiled through something that made your soul shrink? And how much longer will you keep betraying your peace just to protect someone else's mask? The mask that consumes you, why repressing the shadow makes you a puppet? We all wear masks. It starts innocently, a little politeness here, a bit of self-restraint there. We smile when we're annoyed. We nod when we disagree. We pretend we're fine when we're breaking inside. Over time, this mask becomes second nature. It's how we survive in a world that rewards conformity and punishes rawness. But what happens when the mask you wear no longer protects you, and instead begins to devour you? Carl Jung warned us that the longer we repress the parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge, our anger, our envy, our selfishness, our fear, the more those parts gain power in the shadows. And eventually they don't just stay buried, they start pulling the strings. You see, the shadow doesn't vanish when ignored. It festers, it waits. And then it manifests not always in violent or dramatic ways, but in subtle, corrosive patterns. Passive aggression, sabotage, addiction, resentment disguised as virtue, control masked as care. It leaks into your relationships, your work, your worldview. You start treating people not as they are, but as projections of your own disowned parts. You gossip about the traits you secretly fear in yourself. You despise in others what you've never accepted in your own psyche. And all the while, you think you're being moral or strong or just honest. But really, you're being ruled not by your higher self, but by the parts you refuse to face. Jung didn't say this to shame us. He said it to wake us up. Because when we repress the shadow, we don't become pure. We become fragmented. We split ourselves in two, the self we show the world and the self we exile. But the exiled self doesn't stay quiet. It acts out often in moments when we feel out of control, or when we're under pressure, or when we're triggered by someone else's authenticity. And if we don't have the courage to meet that shadow head-on, we'll spend our lives being manipulated by it from below our own awareness. Let me ask you something that might hit closer than you'd like. Have you ever done something you couldn't explain? Said something that shocked even you? Maybe you lashed out. Maybe you ghosted someone. Maybe you sabotaged something good. And when it was over, you told yourself, I don't know what came over me. But Jung would say he knew. What came over you was the part of you you've never dared to meet, your shadow, seizing the wheel. This is why some of the most seemingly good people are the most dangerous. Not because they're malicious, but because they believe in their own mask. They've repressed their darkness so completely that when it leaks out, they don't even recognize it. They weaponize morality. They justify cruelty. They lie to themselves and call it truth. And because they're convinced they're on the right side, they never question the damage they cause. In their eyes, they're simply defending the light, never realizing that they've become a vessel for the very thing they're trying to avoid. And this isn't just about others. It's about you. Because every time you suppress your discomfort, every time you fake a smile, every time you silence your rage, you're feeding the mask. You're telling it, this is who I want to be. And eventually, the mask takes over. You wake up one day and realize you don't know what you want, what you feel, or who you are. You become so good at performing that you've forgotten how to live. You become a puppet, not to society, not to your job, not even to another person, but to your own unexamined psyche. But there's another path. One Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole by integrating the shadow instead of denying it. This is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. It's about looking your darkness in the eye and saying, I see you. I will not let you rule me from the shadows, but I will not exile you either. It's about telling the truth first to yourself, then to the world, even if your voice shakes, even if people leave, even if it costs you your mask. So I'll ask you now, not rhetorically, but as a real challenge. What part of yourself have you buried so deep that you no longer recognize it as yours? And what might your life become if you had the courage to bring it back into the light, not to destroy it, but to understand it? The evil that hides in good intentions, how the shadow infects families, movements, and love. We often think evil looks like hatred, violence, or open cruelty. But Carl Jung warned us some of the most destructive forces in the human experience are not born from malice, but from so-called good intentions. The mother who suffocates her child out of love. The political movement that justifies oppression in the name of justice. The friend who manipulates in the name of protecting you. These are not villains in the traditional sense. They're not twirling mustaches or plotting in the dark. They're people who believe they're doing the right thing. And that is precisely what makes them so dangerous, not that they hold power, but that they hold power while claiming purity. To Jung, the most terrifying evil is not the kind that knows it is evil. It's the kind that thinks it's good. Because when we act from the belief that we are righteous, we become blind to the damage we cause. We justify our control, our judgment, our coercion. We say it's for your own good, or I know what's best. And in doing so, we strip others of their agency, their complexity, their autonomy. We don't see people anymore, we see projects to fix, threats to eliminate, or mirrors reflecting back what we refuse to see in ourselves. And all the while we keep smiling. Nowhere is this more common than in families. A parent tells a child not to cry, not because they can't face the child's pain. A father demands obedience, calling it discipline when really he fears losing control. A mother sacrifices everything for her children, but then resents them for the life she didn't live. These are not acts of evil in the conventional sense. They're acts of unconscious shadow, and yet they can shape a life, even break a soul. How many of us are still haunted by the things our parents never said, or the love they gave with strings attached? How many of us carry wounds not from abuse, but from good intentions that denied us the space to be ourselves? Jung saw that the family is often the first place we are taught to deny our own truth. We learn to smile when we're hurt, to please instead of express, to shrink ourselves to fit the emotional fragility of the adults around us. And unless we become conscious of these patterns, we repeat them not just in our own families, but in every relationship we enter. The same principle applies to movements, political, religious, even spiritual ones. They begin with noble goals: equality, justice, healing. But over time, if they don't confront the shadow within, they become infected by it. They start to divide the world into good and evil, us and them, saved and damned. And suddenly, the very thing that was supposed to liberate becomes a tool of tyranny. Ideology replaces empathy. Righteousness replaces curiosity. And the movement becomes a mirror of the very thing it set out to destroy. Jung's warning was not to abandon ideals, but to ground them in psychological awareness. To ask, what part of me is being fed by this cause? Is it my desire to help, or my need to feel superior? Is it a genuine call to justice, or a disguised craving for revenge? These are hard questions, but without them, every good intention contains the seed of evil. Because when we project our unacknowledged darkness onto others, we inevitably dehumanize them, and once someone is less than human in our eyes, anything becomes justifiable. Love, too, is not immune. In fact, it may be the most fertile ground for the shadow to grow. We say we love someone, but what we really mean is, you make me feel whole. And when they stop doing that, when they assert their difference, their independence, their flaws, we feel betrayed. We try to change them, fix them, mold them back into the image we fell in love with. Not because we hate them, but because we cannot tolerate the parts of them that reflect the unloved parts of ourselves. And so love becomes control. Intimacy becomes possession. And the very connection we longed for becomes a battlefield of projections. So let's ask the question we're usually too afraid to face. In what ways has your love been a subtle form of control? In what ways have your noble intentions masked a fear of being powerless, unseen, or abandoned? These questions are not accusations. They are invitations to make the unconscious conscious, to bring the shadow into the light, not with judgment, but with honesty. Because only when we confront the evil that hides in our good intentions can we truly begin to love, not as saviors, not as heroes, not as fixers, but as whole, flawed, conscious human beings. The courage to see How awareness of shadow leads to inner freedom. There is a moment in every honest life when you realize the enemy you've been running from lives inside you. It's not your boss, not your ex, not your parents, not the people who misunderstood you or the world that failed you. It's the part of yourself you've refused to see, the part that lurks beneath your smile, your ambition, your opinions, your goodness. Carl Jung called it the shadow, and he believed that becoming conscious of it is the most difficult, painful, and liberating act a person can undertake. Because once you truly see your shadow, you can no longer like yourself. And that is where freedom begins. But let's not sugarcoat it. Seeing your shadow is brutal. It means admitting that your motives weren't always pure, that your kindness sometimes came with strings, that your silence wasn't humility, but fear, that the people you judged most harshly were often reflecting back parts of you couldn't face. It means taking full responsibility for your inner world, not in punishment, but in truth. And truth, real truth, disrupts everything. It humbles you. It shatters your narratives. It forces you to stop blaming and start becoming. And yet, paradoxically, this collapse of illusion is the beginning of wholeness. Because when you stop dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts, you start to experience something rare in this world, inner peace. Not the fake peace of avoidance or control, but the real peace that comes from no longer being at war with yourself. You stop needing everyone to like you, because you've made peace with the parts of yourself you used to hide. You stop obsessing over being right because you've accepted that you're capable of being wrong, deeply, terribly wrong. And you stop projecting your pain onto others because you've taken the time to sit with it, to learn from it, to own it. Jung didn't believe in destroying the shadow. He believed in integrating it. That means looking at your rage and asking, what is this protecting? Looking at your jealousy and asking, what does this reveal about my unmet desires? Looking at your fear and asking, what truth is this trying to keep me from? You don't fight the shadow with more light. You meet it with understanding. You invite it in. You listen. And in doing so, something extraordinary happens. The energy you used to spend repressing and pretending becomes available for living. Think about that for a second. How much of your life has been shaped not by what you truly want, but by what you're trying to avoid? Avoiding rejection, avoiding failure, avoiding shame. But when you face the shadow, those fears lose their grip. You become less reactive, less fragile, less dependent on external validation. You start to act, not perform. You start to speak, not manipulate. You start to love, not possess. This is not theoretical. This is the lived experience of shadow work. It's messy, it's raw, but it's real. And in a world built on illusion, reality is the most radical path you can walk. Let me ask you now, sincerely, what part of yourself have you been most afraid to face? What truth, if fully seen, would force you to change how you see the world and your place in it? These aren't questions to answer once and forget. They're questions to carry with you like a compass. Because the more you see, the freer you become. Not because you've eliminated the darkness, but because you've stopped being afraid of it. And maybe that's what real strength is, not the absence of shadow, but the presence of awareness. The courage to look into your own depths and not run. The willingness to be honest even when it costs you your image. The ability to say, I am not perfect, I am not pure, but I am whole, I am becoming. That is the journey Jung invites us to take. Not toward perfection, but toward integration. Not toward light alone, but toward the light that comes only when you've walked through your own darkness and lived to tell the truth. So the next time a smile drains your peace, whether it's someone else's or your own, don't rush past it. Don't brush it off. Stop. Listen. Ask the question, what's hiding behind this? Because the moment you dare to see it, truly see it, is the moment you take back your power, your clarity, and your life. That's not just shadow work. That's soul work. And it's the most human thing you'll ever do.